about 11:30 has to leave for unavoidable appointment. We'll be back a little bit later and we'll watch the tape to pick up anything that he missed.
Okay, we are recording again as of this point forward.
We're back. Okay, we've resumed the hearing, and Mr. Simon, you have the floor.
Thank you. So is based on the mapping, is your assumption that the project site soils are categorized as D soils?
That's correct.
And is it HS60?
Hydrologic soil.
HSG.
HSG, okay. D is correct nomenclature.
Yes.
All right. And, but isn't it true that the testing that's been done at hold on, strike that. So were you consulting natural resource conservation soil mapping?
That's correct.
To establish that? And
What soil?
just one. Do you know the soil types that those maps have for the project site?
Yes, the majority of it is what's called Belgrade and Eldridge soils, and then as you proceed to the south, there are some Adams and Windsor loamy sands, but most of that is outside of our project site.
So aren't the Belgrade and Eldridge soils BD and CD type soils, not D?
Well, I think there's a D component, and the industry practice through our years of working with the stormwater management program at the state of Vermont is that when soils have a dual classification, such as that, so a B/D or a C/D, what that refers to is a drained versus an undrained condition. So in other words, if you can actually drain the soil with some sort of under drain or other method to lower the groundwater table, then it would be a B soil or a C soil, depending on the case. Absent that, it defaults to being a D soil and is treated such for stormwater model. And we've had that verified through dozens of applications with the State of Vermont Stormwater Management Division. And you are allowed to do additional testing to sort of pinpoint soil types, but it is not required.
But wouldn't the site-specific testing be what you would have to do to determine if there is the ability to have on-site treatment?
Again, it's allowed but not required. The industry standard is to use the Soil Conservation Service map.
So in the application under criterion 1, it indicates the goal for the project is improve overall water quality. Doesn't it say that?
Yes.
If that were the goal, would you do site-specific testing to see if you could do a better job preserving water quality?
Our standard for improving water quality is typically to meet the regulations that we're subject to.
Right.
And so we, met all regulations regarding stormwater management from the site and obtained all the necessary permits.
So when you say the goal for the project is to improve overall water quality, you don't mean to improve it from its current condition, you mean improve it from what it could be if the project were done without certain controls in place?
Actually, in this particular case, I actually would say it improves it from the current condition because we're treating a vast amount of currently untreated stormwater. So,
Well, you're also creating impervious surface,
Right.
creating an erosion, right?
I wouldn't say we're creating erosion, no.
Is that what the silt fencing is for, is because there's erosion?
The silt fence is to prevent erosion.
It doesn't prevent it though, it mitigates it.
Correct.
And the net result of the project is to add phosphorus to the lake.
I would dispute that.
Your own calculations say that you're gonna add upward of 13 pounds of phosphorus a year.
I don't believe I provided that calculation.
So your testimony is that you're gonna have a no net phosphorus increase to the lake?
I haven't done a numerical analysis of it, but qualitatively, by treating, far, far more impervious surface as part of our design than we would on, say, a virgin site with just only new development, I would say that we are treating more runoff post-construction than is occurring now.
Right, than occurring now, but you're adding area that needs treatment as well.
Let me so if there's currently, I believe, 6+ acres of impervious surface out here that is being untreated, we're adding 2. But after the fact, so there's a scenario where we only treat that 2 acres and we ignore the other 6, correct? And we are actually treating all 8 or a portion of that, say 6. I'm just rough numbers here. Then I would say that that is an improvement on water quality from the site.
So the current impervious surface calculation that you just mentioned, how did you reach that?
Excuse me. It was a rough number from my memory, but it's written down in our application. So I could explain a little more if you'd like. It's all in our pre-filed testimony. So we needed to do stormwater treatment for our project. Hazelett also needed to do stormwater treatment as what's called a 3-acre site. Probably most people in this room are familiar with that.
Yep.
And so that is incorporated into our design.
Do your calculations start with the entire property owned by Hazelett in the vicinity of the site?
So there's a bunch of sort of various accounting of impervious surface that goes with this. It leads to a very confusing set of numbers. I know some of the other pre-filed testimony referenced some what they believe were some contradictions. So we're required to treat 100% of, or an equivalent amount equal to 100% of our new impervious surface. And as a 3-acre project, we're required to treat 50% of the existing impervious surface. We exceed that.
So do you agree that criterion 1 doesn't just ask whether you've met other state requirements, but is an independent standalone criterion for water quality?
My interpretation of that has always been there's a presumption of compliance if you obtain the necessary permits.
What's that based on?
Every other application I've ever submitted to TEC.
Did you include in your analysis the slopes of the sites?
There was I guess I'm not sure what you mean by include. Certainly our entire site design is aware of the slope of the site, sure.
Do you know what those slopes are?
It varies wildly throughout the site. There is I suspect you're mostly concerned with the steep bank behind the buildings. And, that slope is as steep as 1.5 to 1, which we will be, flattening it as part of the project to some degree.
So just when you're talking about the presumption that you think applies based on other permits, do you agree that those other permits do not prohibit or prevent pollution? They manage pollution or they allow pollution?
I don't know that I would be, qualified to offer an opinion on that. I'm an engineer, I'm not a scientist. And so as engineers, we work with certain rules and regulations as they're presented to us and meet them the best we can. And then whether we are or not is determined by, the relevant regulatory authority, the Stormwater Management Division typically. And it's our presumption that those rules were built in such a way to, prevent pollution.
Well,
That's the whole idea of them.
just to be clear, the rules are there to minimize pollution. They don't prevent pollution caused by development, do they?
I wouldn't want to make a definitive statement on that. You'd have to ask someone who wrote the rules.
So there will be stormwater and other impacts that will occur if the project's built versus if it remains in its current undeveloped state. Is that a fair statement?
Sure.
And a smaller project would have less of those impacts, correct?
I would say not necessarily. If you put in a small project with no stormwater management at all, then that would have more impact than a large project that has modern state-of-the-art stormwater management.
In evaluating, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. It would depend on the scale and scope of the project.
Understood. In evaluating impacts of the project under criterion 1, did you consider any data showing the current condition of the bay?
No.
And do you agree that the bay does not meet water quality standards?
That's not my area of expertise.
You're not aware that the bay is degrading and becoming eutrophic?
Only as much as, someone who reads an article in the Free Press that states such.
Are you aware that the state's put significant financial resources into trying to clean up the bay?
Sure.
Do you think that data related to the current environmental condition of the bay is important in understanding whether pollution that could be added would violate criterion 1?
I guess what's the actual question here?
Do you need to know the baseline? Do you need to know what the current condition of the bay is in order to be able to analyze or understand whether the development will meet criterion 1?
No, I don't think so, because the condition of the bay is affected by, countless sites and countless projects, and all we can manage is our own project and site.
So you disagree with the proposition that the project will ultimately add net increase in phosphorus year over year to the bay?
I have not done a quantitative calculation.
So you don't know?
But I would be correct.
And did you factor into any of your analysis, I'll strike that. And you saw the comments from A&R about criterion 1D? Just indicating that they had asked for some information and had not received it.
Yes, we provided a written response as discussed.
Right. And in regards to that request, they were asking effectively about a vegetation management plan, is that right?
There was some vegetative management questions, a lot of very specific questions about whether we were proposing development within the floodplain, which we are not. And in terms of vegetative management plan, I believe we just referenced them to our already submitted plans regarding landscaping and usable area that were submitted as part of the application, and that if they needed something more specific than that, we would work with them on that.
All right, so you have no other than what's been submitted with the application, there's no other vegetation management plan or the like, correct?
There's nothing in addition to what I consider a very robust vegetation plan already.
And you saw what A&R submitted regarding 1F as well. And my related question is just whether the responses you provide A&R that we haven't seen yet, whether those also respond to 1F.
And on that issue again, dialogue always happens between regulators and applicants and other parties. It's only if it's something that either A&R is going to rely on or we're going to rely on, then it's submitted as part of the application materials. But every communication between an applicant and agencies doesn't automatically become an exhibit in a hearing. It's only if it's something we're relying on or something the agency is going to rely on in presenting evidence as part of the proceeding. So these continued questions about that dialogue going on, like I said, happens all the time. If we're not relying on it and A&R isn't relying on it, then it's not part of the evidence and we can't rely on it to meet our burden.
I don't disagree with anything Chris has said. I think we're trying to create a record of what has been provided, what hasn't been provided, because to argue over a post-hearing memoranda over that very issue of whether the burden's met. So it's relevant whether something more has been provided or not. But I'm ready to move on.
Do you have more questions for the witness?
Yep.
Please go ahead.
What is your understanding regarding whether the project must comply with, in regards to its compliance with criterion 1F of Act 250, and how that relates to the Shoreline Protection Act? And
So, our approach to complying with the Shoreline Protection Act was to meet town of Colchester regulations, as Colchester is a delegated authority
right.
in regards to the Shoreline Protection Act. So, in other words, we don't need to apply for a shoreline permit from the state of Vermont. They're a delegated authority, and as part of that, it's reviewed during the town, planning and zoning approval process, whether it's a site plan or a conditional use or a final plat hearing or a combination of all of the above that we had. And so that was, we prepared, our plans. They were heavily reviewed. And I think most people in this room were in half a dozen hearings. And so it's our position that by, obtaining that town approval, we're meeting the.
So just to be clear though, doesn't the Shoreline Protection Act exempt Act 250 permanent projects from the Shoreline Protection Act and instead rely on Act 250's criterion 1F?
That was my understanding. I could be wrong.
Right. And so you don't consider compliance with criterion 1F to require you to meet the same objective requirements as the Shoreline Protection Act?
Again, I think there's a presumption that if we meet the Colchester standards, we are meeting that.
Right. So assume for the sake of my question that Colchester standards, the town permit, are irrelevant because under Act 250 it says that you're exempt from the Shoreline Protection Act permit. If you, and we all agree you don't have to get a Shoreline Protection Act permit, but don't you think that that the Act 250 Commission should apply standards that are at least as protective of the shoreline as the Shoreline Protective Act?
Objection. That's a legal policy question, not an engineering question.
To that.
Sustained, I think that can be something we can ask you to brief.
So to be clear, you have not attempted in this project to meet the objective requirements of the Shoreline Protection Act. It's just been not a consideration.
I think there's a lot of consideration that goes into, protecting the shoreline, as we've outlined in some of our other testimony and in mine regarding protecting the shoreline. We did not specifically use the Shoreline Protection Act criteria because we weren't subject to it.
Right. The Shoreline Protection Act has like objective criteria about how steep the slopes can be, how much of the site can be developed, and you didn't.
There are a lot of objective criteria that is also allowed to be interpreted and judged and waived.
Sure.
If we had to, we would have gone through that process.
Right, but you have not, in fact, applied any of those objective criteria to your analysis of the project.
No.
Thank you. And you've also not applied the A&R best management practices, correct?
The A&R best management practices for what?
Their policy for analyzing Act 250 projects has best management practices, doesn't it?
I'm not familiar with this. There's best management practices, sort of an umbrella term. There's lists of best management practices for stormwater. There's best management practices for logging roads. I don't know what you're specifically referring to.
So A&R has a policy, I assume you're aware, but if you're not, just tell me, but they have a policy on how they analyze projects in Act 250 and Act 248 relative to things like water quality. Are you aware that they have a policy on that that's published?
Oddly, no.
Okay.
And I've done dozens of Act 250 projects and quite a few Act 248 projects.
All right, so whatever A&R's policy on analyzing those projects is, has not been reviewed and analyzed with respect to the project, fair to say?
I suppose so.
Are you aware that under criterion 1F, an applicant must prove that the project must of necessity be located on a shoreline in order to fulfill the purpose of the development or subdivision, and the development or subdivision will, insofar as possible and reasonable in light of this purpose?
I've read that language, sure.
And was there any analysis done to determine if the project should be located south of West Lakeshore Drive?
I believe, and this is probably, it's not really an engineering question. I might defer more to Ben and Chris on this, but we were tasked with redeveloping the site in question.
Sure.
And that's what we were hired to do.
Well, so who's providing, on behalf of the applicant, an analysis of necessity relative to criterion 1F?
So, I guess it's just sort of a vague question. It's a little difficult to say. I mean, you can build this project anywhere, theoretically. You could build it on top of Mount Mansfield, but it's not really, it doesn't really fit, the project program. And I think, certainly, and again, this isn't really my expertise, but I think all along there was a presumption on my part that, a hospitality project such as this does not mix with a manufacturing plant on the other side.
That's an issue.
Therefore, it needed to be.
Yeah, that's an issue of preference, not necessity, though, correct?
I'm not sure that it could have gotten through, town zoning. They don't like that sort of stuff.
Well, it would be in a different zoning district if it were south of the West Lakeshore Drive, the LS2.
Objection, I'm not sure what the relevance is.
Mr. Simon,
I'll ask
could you
you.
help me out on this? Is the necessity question one that stems from what you described as A&R best management practices, or from some other source?
It's criterion 1F. Says.
Yeah.
And here, the relevant piece in there, it's in the record, so there isn't any specific analysis of it. This is redevelopment of a previously developed site. It's not new development on virgin shoreland. And so that is qualitatively handled differently for purposes of criterion 1F. If we were going out to the side of a lake and nothing had ever been there before, the necessity piece is very different than redeveloping a site that was previously a motel and parking lot into an inn, as we're proposing here.
To be clear, they're redeveloping part of it. Some of it's new development. I think we all agree 1F applies, and that the applicant is burden of proving that the project must necessarily be located on the shoreline. If the applicant's position is that it doesn't, by physical necessity, but just by preference it does, then that's the state of the record. I can leave it at that.
It was a lodging development before. It will be a lodging development afterwards, and the implications of that for purposes of criterion 1F, the parties can deal with, I think, in post-hearing filings if necessary.
That's fine. Just a couple more things on that, though, just on the factual side of it. Did the applicant consider other locations for the project?
Not that I know of.
And did the applicant consider a smaller version of the project?
Not that this was the version of the site that was brought to me. Most projects undergo quite a bit of massaging until before they reach the final stage, but I think they were all approximately this scale.
Does the application materials or your testimony address the public investment in cleaning up Malletts Bay?
No.
Does the application or your testimony address how the project will affect the public investment or the ability of the public to use and enjoy access to the lake or the bay?
No.
And one thing I've just not understood, so hopefully you can clarify it, is there current public access to the bay from the project site?
I believe so. I think probably people use it as a courtesy, but I don't think it's a specifically allowed public use now.
And will there be public access to the bay on the project site after the project's constructed?
I think insofar as the public would be the users of the restaurant and
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
people who are not customers of the project.
I don't believe so.
Okay. And let's see.
Okay, so what's next? Go back to soils. Steep slopes.
Where we believe in the application materials, it says that the slopes are 0 to, or sorry, the stormwater materials, that the slopes are 0. Oh, is the slope on Lakeshore lots 0 to 3%?
There's again, you can calculate what the slope is, depends on where you're calculating it.
Right, that's the, is that the range?
The flat area between the existing retaining wall back to the toe of the steep bank is 0. I would say is 0 to 3.
And then, okay, does it go up?
And then it goes very steeply up from there, and then it's relatively flat between the top of that bank and the road.
Do you know what the slopes are, their steepest?
They're like 1.5 to 1, which would be like 66%.
And so regarding the impervious figures, where can I go for the controlling figures on impervious? Because as we've looked at the application materials, it appears to be 0.605 in some places, 0.66 in some places, and 0.76. And our witness had indicated she thought that it was more in the range of existing impervious of around 0.3%. So where's the definitive place to determine the current impervious?
Yeah, so the final impervious number for both sites, if all you're interested in is one final number, is 8.67 acres. And that's what's included in the stormwater.
Right, that's post-development.
Correct.
Right. But where do we go to determine the pre-development? Because one of the points you're making is that there's all this treatment from 6 to 8. Mm-hmm. If what's existing is less, that affects the analysis And so I'm just trying to understand how are you getting your current impervious?
So, I mean, certainly we calculated it. I don't have the exact number right in front of me, but it's certainly as part of our stormwater permit application.
Yeah.
All of that stuff was laid out very, very critically in tabular form on our plan sheets that went with that application, which is public record. And as stated, you're going to see different numbers because the accounting that they use is very, sort of confusing. There's existing impervious surface, there's redevelopment impervious surface, there's new that is treated, there's existing that is treated. And so it's very easy and understandable that people would kind of look through those records and say that there must be some sort of discrepancy here. All I can tell you is that it was heavily vetted for months and is permitted, and would stand by it.
But where do we go if we want to be able to retrace or do our own assessment of the existing current impervious surface? Is there somewhere or the commission wants to know, what the existing impervious surface, is there somewhere we can go to identify that?
I mean, if you need it more clearly, I could come up with that number for you, sure.
Yeah, well, so what we'd like to know how you got to the current impervious, or what the existing.
We surveyed the
impervious is.
site and calculated an area.
Right, and so what we want to know is what when you say you surveyed the site, what does that mean? Like what materials did you use?
Oh, okay, yeah, I can speak to that. So we included the existing paving and parking and gravel parking that is out there. We included the old motel footprint under that. And
It's not currently impervious.
but it was when we surveyed the site. We
Okay.
surveyed the site in 2017. It's still there.
But it's not there now.
It's still considered redevelopment.
Okay. Well, but hold on, so let's just focus on it. So there might be a discrepancy. If some people are looking at what is currently there that's impervious, they're looking at different things than you were looking at when you did your
Yeah, but
assessment.
not appreciably so. It's not a large amount.
Okay, so go ahead.
That's okay. I was done.
All right. And so do you derive those figures by going out to the site and physically measuring all those areas?
We survey them to draw a plan, and then using a computer-aided design CAD model, I can literally draw a figure, click on it, and it gives me an area.
All right, so the survey is like a licensed surveyor goes out and measures?
Correct. Right. Yeah, we have a boundary survey stamped by a licensed surveyor for that site.
And those impervious areas were surveyed by like some kind of surveying equipment?
GPS equipment, theodolite, standard equipment.
And then those calculations or analyses were fed into a CAD design system, and the CAD design system determined what the impervious numbers.
I will say, just so we're clear, that we didn't do that for every square foot of the factory side of the road. Some of those areas were scaled from aerial photography and site visits.
Okay, thank you. Your permit, your testimony identifies operational stormwater authorization as 4440-9050. Is that
Point
right?
one.
Sorry, what's that?
Point one.
Point one.
Is it?
The project overview, witness, Mr. Avery, we thought identified the construction authorization as 4440-9020.
That's the construction stormwater authorization
That's
versus the
construction.
operational.
Gotcha. And so those are two separate authorizations, correct?
That's correct. Describe those if you like.
And so in your testimony where you reach conclusions, are you referring only to one of those or to both of those?
Oh, definitely both.
And is it your testimony? So to the extent your testimony describes a 48-seat restaurant, that's amended and it's to the 40-seat.
That's correct, and that's memorialized in the wastewater permit and the flow calculation.
And you did not prepare an independent maximum occupant load analysis for the restaurant, bar, event areas?
No, that's outside of my scope.
And work within the 100-foot setback does include grading, utilities, a footpath, and driveway and parking reconfiguration, correct?
That's correct.
as well as a pump station.
That's correct.
Can you put that site back up?
I'll try, let's see if
Yeah,
it's.
if you can. And the project will disturb approximately 2.8 acres during construction.
I could, if that's what it says, yes. Certainly around that area.
And you agree that construction on moderate to steep slopes presents erosion control risks?
Correct.
Your construction approach depends on the contractor, the silt fencing we were talking about, them putting them up, monitoring them, doing formal inspections, and post-rain event inspections.
We prepared a very thorough, we believe, erosion prevention and sediment control plan to be implemented during construction. It includes best management practices, includes, and inspections and monitoring and reporting.
So your opinion regarding sediment not reaching Lake Champlain assumes that all those measures are going to be implemented effectively during construction, correct?
Absolutely.
Just back on the site plan,
Mhm.
one of the things that we're trying to clarify is if you, so the pump station is all the way to the top right or the northeast
Yeah.
corner of the project, that is within, we all agree that's within the 100-year, or the 100-foot buffer, right?
Sure.
And it's gonna be buried,
That's correct.
and it's gonna have sewage pumped through it.
That's correct.
Where is it going to be pumped to?
So there, as part of the Malletts Bay sewer project, which this portion of the Malletts Bay sewer was installed last year, I drove through it every day, which was really fun. They installed connection points for every property.
Right.
So we will be, pumping to one of those connection points. I can point to it specifically on the plan if you would like. I don't think this is the right sheet for it.
But, well, it's not on this sheet, maybe it's on another sheet, but is there a sheet that shows, because what I'm just trying to understand, just looking at, I didn't see any pipe going from the pump station.
Yeah, that's turned off on this particular sheet.
Okay, but it's on, there's somewhere else where I can locate that?
Multiple ones. If you would want to pull up site and utility plan, C2.0.
Do you have the exhibit number there?
I don't.
I can site utility.
Okay, which number was it, 2.0, Scott?
I see it, it's 28. And then my approach to the screen, I think that's probably easiest.
Yeah, please.
So the pump station's here, goes to a ballast pit, and then the pressurized force main, which is just a pressurized sewer pumps up the bank along this line, and then if you could scale up a little bit more. So, and then ties into an existing sewer stub that was installed here. Oh, actually, excuse me, comes all the way over here. Here's the sewer stub. So this sewer stub, we scaled off the as-built plans provided by the town. So there's a pipe that was left there that we can connect.
So while you're up there, can you just point out, where's the area of disturbance?
That's not on this.
Oh, that's not MF, we'll get back to the site plan.
I think I can speak to that.
So the site plan shows an area, and I guess it looks like it's in green.
Yeah, they're
That's
big
correct.
lines.
That's the area of disturbance, right?
That's our limit of disturbance.
And so, in the far northwest section, that includes new riprap and dispersal pad.
That's correct. It's sort of hard to see in this plan because of the multiple heavy thick lines, but yes.
And the same thing's true up here, some riprap and dispersal pad. Could you describe what those dispersal pads are?
Sure. That is, so riprap is typically installed at the end of stormwater or drainage pipes, so that when you get a heavy storm and water is flowing out of that very fast, it doesn't erode the ground where it comes in.
So those two areas I just identified where those dispersal pads are, that's where stormwater generated from the site is going to be discharged, correct?
That's correct. And so we did a couple, if I can anticipate maybe where you're going, like we did a couple design choices to minimize erosion from those pipes. One was to install these riprap dispersal pads, and the other thing we did is the last sections of pipe that go to those riprap are very flat. They're like about 0.5% slope, and what that does is it slows the water down. So if you have pipe coming down a steep slope, the water will necessarily come, pounding down that. But by flattening out the slope of those pipes, it actually slows down the water and reduces it to what we call a non-erosive velocity.
There'll be no treatment of those discharges, though, correct?
Correct.
And they're within the floodplain as well, correct?
There's the pipes do not discharge in the floodplain. We extended the riprap right to the edge of the lakes. We thought that made sense, and that was one of the A&R questions, was whether we had any disturbance within the floodplain. There is the last 2 feet of that riprap extends past the floodplain, and if that's decided that they don't want that, we'll just trim it back. It's fine.
I know you may have responded to A&R on this, but are there any changes to the retaining wall being proposed?
No,
And the retaining wall is going to remain in place in its current configuration?
that's my understanding.
And so isn't there, in addition to the floodplain and the 100-year or the 100-foot buffer, isn't there also a portion of the property to the south side of the project site on the north side of West Lakeshore Drive that is supposed to remain undisturbed?
Undisturbed?
Yeah.
I guess I don't know what you mean by supposed to be.
Aren't there frontage buffers or frontage areas that are?
There are zoning setbacks. That doesn't mean you can't disturb them to install utilities or other things. It just means you can't have buildings.
But so as far as the percentage of disturbance though, do you acknowledge that area has an area of disturbance of 47% in the front area of the front setback area?
An area of disturbance of 47%?
Of that area. Yeah, I'm gonna withdraw, so we'll address that through our experts. So maybe you're the person to ask this about this. Can you scroll up a little? So the south side of West Lakeshore Drive would involve clearing of the trees that are currently located where the parking area and the drive are located on the site plan, right?
Yeah, I believe we're cutting some trees and then putting some back.
And then you're also turning the wetland area into your creating gravel wetland 1 there.
That's
And are you aware that prior Act 250 permits required maintenance or retention of trees in that same area?
no.
Yeah. So to the extent, and I'm assuming the commission will take judicial notice of the prior permits, but to the extent that there were any prior permits issued that required vegetation to remain in place, have you considered that?
No.
And the pump station that we talked about that's in the northeast section north of East Lakeshore Drive, that is a structure, isn't that correct?
Yes, I think it's either 6 or 8 foot diameter concrete structure.
And do you know what the elevation the lowest elevation of that infrastructure is? Pipe and pump stations?
You're asking what the bottom of the pump station is?
Yeah.
Let me have that. It's like 98.5.
Would that be submerged in a flood?
The pump station's waterproof. It's watertight.
So if it,
We leak tested.
right, so
It's
if that-
required by standards.
My question is, that's under the, that would be underwater in a flood, correct? Whether it's airtight or waterproof or not, it would be underwater.
I suppose so.
So it would not be accessible at that time, correct?
No, I would dispute that it'd be inaccessible because the top would still be outside of the flood, and that's how you access the pump stations through the top.
So is, so you're saying that the pump station will always be accessible for maintenance because even in a flood, it will not be fully submerged? Correct.
Yeah, the top of the pump station is at like elevation, here, I'll just tell you exactly. The top of the pump station is elevation 107.75, which is 5 feet above the flood,
Okay.
almost 6.
And is there an all-weather maintenance route to the pump station so it can be accessed in high water emergency conditions?
Yeah, so under the access route would be along the walking path, which is all well above the flood.
You calculate the project's design flow at 4,462 gallons per day, is that correct?
That sounds right.
And you compare that to a prior approval of 4,482 gallons per day for a 166-foot seat restaurant.
That's correct. That's how we were, that was sort of a target because that was what was what we could get for an allocation from the town of Colchester.
And that's a design flow comparison, not a maximum occupancy or maximum event capacity analysis, correct?
It's based, I think that could be two different things, sure.
Yeah, but to be clear, previously the 4,482 gallons per day was for a 166 seat restaurant, and you're calculating less gallons per day for this 7 building project. And your testimony does not specify the number of people who can simultaneously occupy the restaurant, event spaces, decks, cottages, and beach facilities, correct?
We used, again, similarly to what I said before, we used the design flows that are presented in the wastewater environmental protection rules, chapter 1, for, inns, for restaurants, for spa spaces, and for factory workers, for all of the stuff. We use the tables that are industry standard.
All right, thank you. And could you answer my question from earlier about the access to the dumpster? Is that dumpster at the northwest corner of the property? Is that a seasonal?
My understanding is that it's seasonal for the marina users.
So then during the winter, where are hotel staff going to be depositing trash?
It's across the street. I assume they probably use golf carts or, some sort of management system.
And has the traffic impact of that kind of use by employees going across West Lakeshore Drive been now analyzed as part of the assessment?
I don't think it's often enough. My sort of, Jen would be the better person to answer that, but my sort of adjacent professional opinion would be that wouldn't be enough to impact our traffic study.
So I just want to see, this site plan, this identifies the flood plain, doesn't it?
No.
Or is this one?
It identifies contours, which I could point to elevation 102.
But some of the path and the parking area, that would all be in the flood, parts of that would be in the floodplain.
None of it would be. I dispute that. It's all about elevation.
Have you also demarcated the 105-foot demarcation line as indicated in the town plan?
105 foot?
Flood damage.
The flood damage zone?
Yeah, when you say, I mean, we show the 105 contour on our plans, for sure.
Is
But
that,
I can consider it in that context.
is that because that's the area of anticipated flood damage in a flooding situation?
That's the area that was flooded.
Or the area that was flooded?
Yeah, I'm unaware of regulations that contemplate the 105 elevation.
No,
That's
but-
something we need to consider.
Are you aware that prior flooding came up to the 105 elevation point?
My understanding was that the historical flood a few years back was 103 or so, and maybe there may have been damage above that due to wave action, perhaps. But, I'm not an expert on wave action.
So is it fair to say that anything within the 105 feet back from the shore is subject to wave damage in a flooding event?
I'm not an expert.
That's what the town plan says.
So could I know that, I don't know if we're gonna take a lunch break or not, but I need about 5 minutes to find one other area of questioning I need to ask about.
But we are going to take a lunch break. My question for you is, how much more do you have for this witness?
Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna anticipate about 20 minutes to a half hour more questions for this witness.
What I was thinking of doing is we could do that and get to a 12:30 lunch break. That would be a nice cutoff.
Sure, so can we take a 5-minute recess then, so I can just locate this
What are you
other?
looking for?
I have have another set of questions that it'll take me a couple minutes to find. It might even be 2 minutes, but I just don't
Okay,
want
well,
everyone.
we're not gonna take a break. We're just gonna stay right here while you do that.
All right, that's fine. So what's the best?
That work? No, I can move you.
Extra spots on that.
I'll do that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, because we can,
No, that's fine. That'll reach. Yeah. And my cord might planning.
it's good to.
My cord might work for you. Oh, good. Good cord.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go through this. All right, we're all set.
Okay, let's continue.
So, Mr. Homestead, regarding gravel wetland number 1, that is sized to treat 4.01 acres, is that accurate?
It sounds correct, yes.
And the actual watershed measures 6.4 acres, is that correct?
I would have to check my calculations, but that seems like the right range.
And isn't that a violation of the Vermont Stormwater Management Manual, section 2.2.4?
What are you saying is a violation?
Sizing it to treat 4.01 acres when the actual watershed is 6.4 acres.
The 4.0 likely refers to the amount of impervious surface, and then the overall watershed includes all the grass areas as well.
Is the impervious coverage 0.6 or 0.76?
I can't play gotcha with you on exact numbers.
That's fine.
I mean, if there's a specific exhibit you'd like him to explain a number on, I'm sure the witness would be.
No,
happy to do that.
I appreciate that. How do you provide, strike that, yeah. Is 105 West Lakeshore Drive also owned by the same owner as the owner of the project site?
I don't know.
I'd have to.
If it is, shouldn't it be included as involved land under the project?
Objection, that's beyond the scope of this witness's testimony.
And so the manager's unit, we're trying to just understand the intent behind the manager's unit, because in the past, I think I'm understanding that it would be occupied sort of as a residential dwelling unit, but it sounds like the testimony today takes a position that it's just part of the commercial enterprise regardless of the use. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think wait a second.
Are they plowing?
It's like it's an F-35. But I think, if it's, my understanding is that, it's an employee who has to stay there as part of their job, and so that's why it's part of the commercial use.
Okay. And so when we were talking earlier about that pump station and related sewer infrastructure that is in the 100-foot buffer, is there something to anchor that and prevent it from floating?
So, generally, the weight of the pump station, the concrete in the pump station, and the water that's in it provides enough weight to prevent it from floating. If we determine when during installation that additional measures are needed, those are available. There's things called dead man. There are various ways to ballast it so that people can float it.
Do you know the percentage of impervious surface that's going to be constructed in the front yard area of the project to the south of the building site?
On the 166.80 side?
Yeah.
The proposed front yard coverage is 46.7%,
Thank you.
which is below the existing front.
You mean below the prior development coverage?
Correct. There's a lot of pavement, as anyone who's at the site visit could see.
But it's also over the 30% that would be allowed if we're applying stormwater management permit standards, right?
Stormwater permits don't contemplate front yard coverage. I don't know what you'd be referring to.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. I misspoke.
Okay, sorry.
I was referring to the MPDS permit, but again, we'll address that in the briefing. So I'm looking at C 3.0. I think it's the same as the site plan, but there's a note on there that says restore existing paved parking, provide topsoil, seed, and mulch. So you're taking a position that you can restore impervious surface.
Where are you looking?
So it's, it might not be that same one. It's drawing C-3.0.
Yeah.
At the very,
Which is Exhibit 6.
Yeah.
so exhibit 6, in the road, south of Cottage 2, there's a little
I see it now.
note with arrows that says restore existing paved parking, provide topsoil, seed, and mulch.
Well, maybe that's not the best wording. We're restoring it to grass. That's why you're providing the topsoil, seed, and mulch. There's existing pavement there in that area. And when the project's complete, that will be grass.
So that is to take what is now pervious and make, or now impervious and to make it pervious?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're to the far east of the project site where it says install stone check dams and swale, see details.
Mm-hmm.
Those check dams are to manage the velocity of stormwater, is that what that is?
That's right, but specifically during construction.
Okay.
So those would be installed during construction, and then once vegetation is established, they would no longer be necessary.
Right. Well, I just want to get that one other, the traffic study talked about parallel parking along the access drive, but you didn't see where that parallel parking was noted on the site plan. Could you explain that?
I believe that's temporary parallel parking for drop-off. There's not permanent parallel parking.
Okay. And the plan showing truck turning movements, has the westbound trucks moving through the access drive against the one-way traffic flow? Am I understanding that correctly?
No, we're showing the anticipated traffic flow with the trucks, and as indicated by the heavy black arrows on that one.
So the heavy black arrows are,
You have to back up into the drive.
So we did it in both directions because fire trucks don't care about one way. Like depending on what direction they're coming from, they'll ignore that because they want to get there as fast as they can. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you'll see two separate turning movements on this plan, once from each direction.
okay, so, okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Why is the fire lane shaped the way it is and not uniform?
To minimize impervious surface, we're providing, a wider area in front of, the main building where we feel like, there's going to be the most drop-off area, and then we neck it down.
So is the fire truck supposed to fit into the entire fire lane or just use a portion of that?
What's labeled a fire lane is just to keep people from parking there permanently.
Okay, so the actual usage is of the whole.
Yeah, you see that everywhere in front of grocery stores and things like that.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, one of the permits obtained by the current applicant for the current project site was 4C0449-1A. Is that correct?
I think that's an older permit, but yes, it's been superseded at this point.
Right, but you wouldn't, sitting here today, do you know if that required retention of certain trees as part of the?
That was just a wastewater permit. That wouldn't contemplate trees or anything else.
Right. Are you aware of any of the other Act 250 permits that require retention of trees on the project site?
Again, no.
Right, so if there are prior permits requiring retention of trees, the applicant's effectively requesting to amend those to not require those trees to remain?
I would need to review those materials to have an opinion on them.
I'm saying hypothetically, because we have to look through all the permits, but in the conditions, but if there's an existing permit condition requiring retention of trees on the project site, this application where you're clearing south of West Lakeshore Drive would be changing that and modifying that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to take you at your word on the wording, I suppose. So
I'm just saying hypothetically, I'm not saying it is that way. All right, any other questions? Thank you.
We have no redirect.
I don't have any questions.
So it looks as though that covers the applicant's pre-filed testimony.
And we have no further witnesses and no live testimony to offer. So our case is closed and we stand by our application and exhibits and pre-filed testimony.
So we could take a lunch break now, Mr. Simon. How much, well, let me ponder this for a moment. Mr. Roy, how much cross-examination do you have in mind for the Mr. Simon's witnesses?
I assume that we will easily finish this afternoon.
You didn't answer my question.
Not sure yet.
So let's do this. It's 7 past the hour. Let's reconvene at 12:40. Okay?
No, the joke, I'm going to negative. All right, we are unmuted online.
We're back on the record.
We are still recording.
Thank you for your patience, et cetera. And I think we are now at the point of, I think I know the answer to the question, but I'm going to ask it on the record. Ms. Mosco, do you wish to offer any affirmative testimony on behalf of your agency?
Jen Mojo, Agency of Natural Resources. I don't have any additional testimony to offer beyond what's in our comments.
Thank you.
This time. Thank you.
So I think according to our schedule
Can
that,
I just, sorry, Chris Kyle from the V-Trans has left, and then we do have comments from Vermont Department of Division of Conservation. I don't know if that's where we wanted, the applicant has any comments on that?
we can cover that, I think, in the recess order.
Okay.
I don't think I've seen those.
You,
They're in,
you have seen them.
yeah. Okay. So I think, Mr. Simon, I think that brings us to you presenting the pre-filed testimony witnesses and going through the process that we did with the applicant's witnesses.
Absolutely, but just before we get there, just some housekeeping. The pre-filed testimony of Nancy Cloutier is being withdrawn. And she's not here to testify, and she had significant changes to it, so we're just withdrawing that testimony. Yeah. Well, it's still,
That chart instead?
well, no, but this is, this is what still needs to be changed, so.
No, she gave it just to
She updated it.
She gave it just this morning. Just this morning, she brought it here.
I think we're gonna use this as a study.
Okay, just tell me she brought it today.
That's fine. It's based on the information that's already there. So our first witness is Diane Snelling.
And are we gonna go through and have them enter in all of their pre-filed testimony and then go back and?
We're going to repeat the process that we used this morning. I think that means Mr. Simon initially asking the witness to, we need to, Dan, I don't think you were here when we swore people in this morning. So do you?
Speak up. All right.
Let me go do that. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony or evidence you shall provide relative to the consideration of this application shall be truthful, accurate, and complete under the pains and penalties of perjury? If so, answer, I do.
I do.
Good. Okay, got that. And then you can ask her to confirm the truthfulness and accuracy of the pre-file.
Ms. Snelling, can you confirm the truthfulness and the accuracy of the pre-filed testimony that was submitted on your behalf?
Yeah.
And have there been any changes to that?
No.
Is there anything you heard today that would affect your testimony?
No.
Thank you. Nothing further.
So we did all of our witnesses in and then went back to each of them, which is fine. I don't care one way or the other. Do you want to just do it witness by witness in this manner? I mean, I'm happy to do that too, whatever the commission's preferences.
What's that?
I can go through each one and just do that. That's easier.
Why don't we do that? Let's do it as a bundle.
All right. Next up is going to have Lori Barg, just because she's next to me. State your name for the record.
Lori Bart,
And did you submit pre-filed testimony in this matter?
I did.
And is that testimony true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
It is.
And is there any material changes to that testimony that you need to make?
There might be one thing and I'll figure it out and let you know. Yeah,
All right.
yeah, based on what I heard today.
And then Tom Berry. is not here yet, actually. Or wait, no, sorry, you're Tom.
Yeah, I'm Tom. Took his mask.
Tom's here, your mask is off. Tom, could you state your name for the record?
Tom Berry?
And did you submit pre-filed testimony in this matter?
Yes, I did.
And is that testimony true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Was it Jim?
Yeah, Jim is here, right there.
Oh, okay, Jim, thank you. And you were here not this morning, this afternoon. Jim, what's your name?
Jim Pease.
And Jim, did you submit pre-filed testimony in this matter?
Yes, I did.
And is that testimony true and accurate as submitted, to the best of your knowledge? Thank you. And is Laurel?
She's out of town for 10 days.
Oh, right. And then, did you submit pre-filed testimony? No. All right. And that's everyone, right?
There's another person listed, that
Laurel
was
Butler.
Bill Ramon.
He
Oh, right.
couldn't be here today, could potentially in the morning, but not today. And then the other person had to leave. Just-
Right. So that's all we have for now.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Roy, you can.
Or do you want them to swear in? They swear in just. Yes. Yeah, we did.
So if I'm right about the sequencing, Mr. Roy, you can cross.
And which,
We'll start with Diane, and then we're gonna go to Tom. And then-
after Diane? In a while. We have no questions.
Okay. Mojo, do you have any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
About you? Do you have anything? Okay, I think that makes, and I don't think there's any redirect.
It'd be hard to stay within the scope of cross.
That'd be very brief.
Who would you like to question next?
Tom Berry. Get in the hot seat.
We're gonna interview them.
Chris didn't have any cross questions, so her testimony was in without. So Tom, I asked you, I don't know if I asked you this previously, but did anything you hear today change or affect what you testified to?
Some of what I heard related to the traffic study would suggest that I might enhance a bit of my testimony in that regard, but otherwise, no.
How would you enhance it?
It raises some questions that I felt were left unresolved in my testimony, that testimony. So I might point to a few things on the drawings. I don't know if that's to make some of my points stronger based on what was recorded in the traffic study.
What would be in reaction to what you heard from the traffic
Yes.
expert today? Could he do that, just to point out what he?
I think you can do that on redirect.
I know, but if there's not gonna be a cross, I'm worried that I won't be
Well,
able to.
let's find out.
We have no cross.
No cross. Well, let's, Mr. Berry's here, let him keep it concise.
I will.
Go ahead, can we put up the, which?
It's under site plan, I think,
Yeah,
should be
general
sufficient.
site.
In my testimony, around traffic, I did address what I felt were traffic safety issues related to the project, including on-site circulation for emergency vehicle access. And so I think a few things to point out in that regard that I think were touched on this morning. One is the circulation pattern of a fire truck through the site. And the question was raised as to the whether the on-site traffic circulation, including the one-way flow and the fire lane, would affect the circulation of fire trucks through the site. And so I just wanted to reiterate that in my testimony as it relates to traffic safety, the fact that there is no, the 20-foot standoff from the building is not remotely feasible along the stretch. And the traffic study calls out parallel parking very specifically along that front entranceway. Those aren't shown, and I think if you did show those parallel parking spots, they would significantly conflict with the circulation of emergency vehicle access across the front of the property. And so I wanted to make that point maybe more strongly than I did in my testimony as it relates to circulation on the site. And then two questions that came up related to the testimony and traffic that I touch on in my testimony. One would be how turning movements are counted. And in reading the testimony of the traffic study, the way I read it, and from the testimony, perhaps I was in error, it counts turning movements for the peak hour directly into the parking lot of the side of the street. And then bases the level of service on that. But the traffic study itself indicates that this lane in front of the buildings is to be used for pickoff and drop off. And so what I would have potentially strengthened in my testimony is the fact that in order to execute during peak hour a drop off and park and then get to the building requires one turning movement into the site, another turning movement out of the site, and because the driveways don't align, a third turning movement onto the property. And so it wasn't clear from the testimony to me this morning whether 3 turning movements were counted in assessing the level of service or just 1. And in relation to that peak hour or other access to the site, 17, I think, was the number used for peak hour trips, but anytime you want to, whatever window you want to look at, as far as the level of service along Lakeshore Drive, the activated crosswalk, which I think if we're going to build this project at all, is going to be required, typically would have a 30-second cycle in my experience. And so if you have 17 trips, that's 17 30-second cycles on that crosswalk. Return trips, another 17. You're looking at tens of minutes during which traffic in both directions on Lakeshore Drive will be at a full stop. And so I also, it wasn't clear, I was more confused by the testimony than clarified as to whether that was considered in the level of service. And then the third item on the traffic that I'm scratching my head a little bit on, and I'll admit that I haven't done these measurements myself, but is the ascertation that site distances are good in both directions. And I am a frequent user through here, and my observation, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I've reviewed hundreds of site plans for traffic compliance, is that coming out of the dip, if you will, approaching the site from the west, site distance to this new driveway is less than ideal from the bottom of that dip. And I would note that the traffic study, as I read it at least, doesn't actually ascertain or state what those site distances are, although I'd be prepared to be corrected on that if I missed it. And then in this direction, currently the site distance here is virtually non-existent with the trees, but the fact that, and if these 3 trees are in fact going to be left in place, the existing trees there, there is virtually no site distance coming out off of the property there, and so to make to enter traffic, and so those were issues that came up during the testimony, and then just a clarification that would be helpful to me. I did make comments about the lack of emergency vehicle access to the rear of the property, where it's 3 stories, and by the way, we're servicing a 60-boat marina. Lots of opportunities for emergency vehicles need to access the site. The traffic study says that there's 6 parking spaces here. I only see 4 in the plan, and I would say that that's constrained enough along with this driveway that I think I'd like to see the confirmation whether we're talking 6 or 4. 4 are shown in the plans, but how the number of sites and maneuverability in that location affects any possibility of bringing emergency vehicles to the beach was something else that I expressed a concern within my testimony. And I thought, based on the testimony I heard this morning, I want to make 2 more comments on. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll stand by the testimony of our experts on criterion 5. No need for further questions.
We have, who's next? Mr. Lori Barg or Jim Pierce?
We'll do Jim Dean's next. So Tom, can you see that here? Jim's will take it. State your name.
Good afternoon.
Jim Pease.
And Jim, did you submit pre-filed testimony in this matter?
Yes.
And is the testimony submitted on your behalf true and accurate, to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
Did you hear, well, I guess you weren't here all morning, but have you heard anything since you've been here that would change your testimony at all?
No.
Mr. Pierce, were you here when I swore everybody in first
No.
thing? Okay, well, let's do that. I'll catch you up on that. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will be giving to the commission in this application is truthful, accurate, complete under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay.
And is everything you just said to me also true and accurate?
Yeah.
But prior to being sworn in,
Yeah.
the question I asked you were accurately answered?
Anything for the witness, Mr. Roy?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
There's no cross-examination for you, Mr. Pierce?
Peas.
I'm sorry?
Peas.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I didn't get that from your handwriting. That's my bad.
It's what we call shifting the burden.
Thank you. So I think that you may be excused. We will have your testimony from that you pre-filed. And the way our process was set up today, Mr. Roy had the option to ask you questions in regard to your pre-filed testimony, and then Mr. Simon could follow up on those questions. But since there are no cross-examination questions, I don't think we need to do that, so.
Can I just ask him, because he wasn't here earlier, and I didn't ask him this, have you learned anything since we submitted your testimony that would affect what you want to?
And I'm going to object. That just opens up the door and undermines the whole concept of pre-filed testimony at that point.
Well, I think it's pretty typical for people to be able to say, since they've submitted something, if they've learned something new, that should be put up.
Well, is anything that you heard, Mr. Pease, cause you to retract or amend anything in your pre-filed testimony?
Well, I would say I did hear that I was reminded that I had told someone the requirement in the state stormwater manual about the off-site drainage needs to be either diverted or treated by the applicant, and that is apparently not what is being proposed.
Okay.
And I have no follow-up questions in that regard.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pease.
And Lori Bark. Your name for record.
Lori Bark.
And did you submit pre-filed testimony?
I did,
And is it true and accurate?
as far as I can tell. Yep.
And did you hear anything today that would affect your testimony in a manner in which you feel that you should either correct or clarify your testimony to the commission?
I guess, yes.
And if I could just get some guidance so that everybody is on the same wavelength here. How much latitude do they have with respect to changing their pre-filed testimony? We're bound by our pre-filed testimony, and then they're changing their pre-filed testimony. And there's got to be some latitude because you might hear something completely new and you know, how much latitude is there to go in and reiterate or embellish or build upon testimony that you've already submitted?
It's a fair comment, and so, Ms. Varg, I think what you're limited to is if any of the testimony you heard this morning, any of the information you heard that you hadn't heard when you filed and signed your pre-filed testimony caused you to want to correct or retract or change what's in your pre-file.
Yes.
And okay, could you point to those places and focus on those?
Yes. So one of them is that.
And I should say that doesn't include disagreeing with what you heard, but just focusing on your pre-file.
Yes. So on my profile, I noted that there was a discrepancy among their witnesses that said 48 people in the restaurant for the parking and the traffic and the and then at the very beginning it changed to 40. And throughout the information we've been provided, there's been a discrepancy in numbers. So that's so anything where I said, hey, there's a discrepancy, they basically have changed their pre-file where many of their witnesses say 48, and then in the very beginning, Mr. Avery explained that it was, oh, yeah, indeed 40. So that was one thing that's different. Another thing that I did not know was that Mr. Homestead described that they went out and they surveyed the impervious area. And I'm assuming that it was a, GIS or total station survey of the impervious area on 166 and 180 to come up with their numbers. And then he said they did not do every square foot of the area. So I'm still relying on those extremely disparate numbers in their application filings, in the final plat, and in their pre-filings that still don't answer these questions of, is it 0.66 or is it 0.765 acres of impervious? I just don't know. So I don't have the answer. So, but now that I know it was either GI, total station or however they surveyed it, it would be great to understand better how they came up with this.
I can tell you that the commission will evaluate and assess your pre-file testimony in light of what the commission has heard. And we sort of look at it all in and organically, so we will take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I think that takes us to the point in the hearing where the interested parties who did not file pre-file testimony will be given an opportunity to testify now. And it would be very useful to the commission if, and this is not easy because we have lots of numbers and letters in our Act 250 criteria, but if you can tell us which of those impacts your testimony is covering, that would help us process it. So.
And one point of clarification, if I may, were the other interested parties not subject to the requirement for submitting pre-filed testimony?
I think the commission's intention was that that was for, I guess, so-called expert testimony or something along those lines.
No, and I see it's a reference to expert testimony.
We're gonna keep it open if we can, and
yep.
You may proceed, Mr. Simon.
State your name for the record. Say your name.
Oh, Eric Schultz, I got
Eric, where do you live?
176 Buckingham Drive in Colchester.
And how close is that to the project site?
5 miles or so,
And-
5 minutes.
All right, and what are the topic areas that you believe you have an interest in testifying regarding?
There were quite a few, certainly aesthetics, water quality, traffic, both pedestrian and car traffic. I think density of usage of the bay as well. I guess I did aesthetics, both the building and I call vegetation and trees, and the concern with the constant removal of trees around the vicinity.
And what about 9K public investment?
I'm sorry.
No, criteria 9K public investment? You address that? Or are you able to address that?
Can you tell me what that is?
That's public investment in your case, I think, with respect to water quality improvements.
At a high level, yes.
And then how about criterion 10, town and regional plan compliance?
I'll speak to that.
All right. So,
At some point, can I say, I own multiple other properties and have in the vicinity.
sure, what are those?
Directly on the bay. So I own one it's 25 Sandy Shore, but it's actually owns Lakeshore on East Lakeshore Drive. And then we own, this was some other partners, property 1750 Lakeshore Drive, and then a former property I owned for quite a few years. It was a camp, which has now been redeveloped. It's 4 up. It used to be like 67, but it's 4 up on East Lakeshore Drive from Bayside Park.
And what is your relationship to Malletts Bay?
Multiples. I'm a member of Malletts Bay Boat Club. Again, I own Lakeshore on East Lakeshore Drive, and so I keep several boats moored in the area. One for racing, another one at Runabout, and then another boat off of East Lakeshore Drive. So I spent quite a bit of time there boating. I do swim, involved in a couple minor environmental items.
Do you do scuba diving in the area?
I have done some scuba diving, mostly working on moorings or other boat work, cleaning boats.
And in your role, in your experience with scuba diving, does that give you any perspective on the bay that might be different from other people?
Well, certainly people that don't go down to the bottom of the bay and only look at it from the top. So again, I've been in the bay and swimming in it for many years, and my perception is there is a degradation in the quality, visual and sediment within the bay itself.
So as a diver, you've actually seen the lake bottom near the area of proposed development?
I'm sorry, is it?
As a scuba diver, have you observed the bottom of the lake in areas where it's
yes.
developed versus not developed?
Most of the area is developed.
So is there any difference in the sections of shoreline that have been cleared and built up versus where there's vegetation?
It's fairly pervasive, but it is, you see a lot of sediment that does come in and retains there. Also gets stirred up by all the boating activities that are in there. I attribute some to the runoff that comes from the areas of the shoreline that do not have the vegetation.
Do you have any soil or groundwater concerns with the project based on your experiences with the bay?
Well, I do, and again, so this camp that I used to own was all treed, and I was very careful about keeping the vegetation on the property. And unfortunately, when I sold it, they elected to remove everything and put in concrete blocks, similar to what was done. I think there's the Mungian property in further north on East Lakeshore Drive. So there seems to be a continual habit of removing trees and vegetation, replacing it with riprap, and I'll say from this, we're getting the aesthetics, but aesthetically unpleasant from the lakeside very man-made looking structures. The same thing on our 25 Sandy Shore property, we tried to keep that all tree, so that my goal is to try to keep things treed, and it's unfortunate when I see all of these, continuing along East and West Lakeshore Drive and removal of vegetation, which, and it's not just aesthetics, but, when it's hot outside, and if you're driving around, you notice when you go into the shaded area, it's a lot cooler on a hot day, right? So it's affecting the air quality and your comfort as well.
Do you drive on West Lakeshore Drive?
I do.
And do you have any concerns about the project's impact on traffic?
Not quite a bit. I've noticed it, over the past 40 years deteriorating or, getting worse as far as traffic. So I go to Malletts Bay Boat Club. I have friends and associates along West Lakeshore Drive. I patronize Ace Hardware, all these businesses. So it's getting harder and harder to get in and out of the businesses and make turns, particularly if you're trying to make a left-hand turn across oncoming traffic. So that has, you used to be able to get out from, 2 or 3 cars. Now it's 20 to 30 cars. and okay, you may ask about pedestrian as well. I guess I'll say, there's a lot of commercial activity along that road that, further along where Maz's is and Pioneer Grill and Mike's Auto. So there's quite a bit of traffic, that's going to be additive once more commercial development is, if it is allowed.
Did you hear the testimony today about the crash data?
I did.
And do you have a reaction to that testimony or the information about crashes in the vicinity?
I think that the traffic, again, over the years, I think, has caused people that, they've changed or I think it used to be a higher speed limit, but now it's 25 miles an hour with few people do. And I think as you add traffic, people just get more frustrated and go faster. And I refuse to own a bike along that section of road, which I'm a big road biker. I love the bike paths, but it's dangerous going through the dip and all. Trying to get to Bayside Park is taking your life in your hands, in my mind. There's not sufficient shoulders on the road. There's not sufficient bikeways, and there's nowhere to go. You've got the lakeside with a steep drop off, and then you've got homes or businesses, and then you've got, in many cases, swampy areas, particularly in the area of the moorings and close to where the Hazelett and Hazelett development is proposed, so that we're highly constrained from a, physical perspective of how you can expand.
What's your experience coming through the dips of West Lakeshore Drive, going east by northeast towards the project site past the marina? What's your experience of coming up that hill to where the project site's going to be?
Well, I mean, it's dangerous. Anybody loves to save a little gas and go fast down the hill and then ride back up the hill. So it's both congested. Again, people are not abiding by the speed limit.
And regarding the aesthetics,
can I interrupt it? We're going to touch on pedestrian.
Yeah, what are your concerns about pedestrian?
Well, and again, I'm over the years, and I go, it's a progression, right? You used to be able to walk across the street, then you just put the white line crosswalks, and then you start putting up the yellow signs. Now we got the yellow signs with the flashers. It just keeps getting worse because the drivers are not abiding by these traditional methods of allowing you to cross, So I'll be standing, I'll go from the Ace Hardware Malletts Bay Boat Club with my friends and associates on one side of the lake, and most of the homes there are on the, I think that's a safe statement, but many of the homes are opposite the lakeshore, right? So you're crossing there in several of the places. You've got the boat club, you've got docks and moorings, there's multiple properties that were single-family homes or camps now that have turned into marinas, right? And I've worked with the Army Corps with the trying to save the International Sailing School, so I'm well aware of what some of the mooring and marina aspects are. I've talked to all of the marinas there when I was trying to save the International Sailing School, which unfortunately, due to a number of instances, was not a successful effort. But going back and forth across the street is painful. Even when you've got a crossing sign there, people will not stop. Typically You know, you need someone that's attentive from one side to slow down and stop to get the people from the other side to go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to stop here, right? So it's, you could be standing there by the sign and nothing happens. You know, much worse where there isn't even, or actually it's about the same, whether there's a sign there or not. And this is East West Lakeshore and West Lakeshore Drive. People are just, and my perception is the more you put these in here, and I'm thinking I got a friend that hates speed bumps and stop signs, right? And I hate driving with them, but they just find them as an inconvenience. So they're just gonna go flying over these speed bumps and stuff, you know, ignore the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit and go faster because they're annoyed by it all. And these are friends. You know, so it's just a cultural thing where you put more of these in, people get more frustrated and ignore them. So just adding to this, particularly if you've got parking on one side versus the other side, is going to exacerbate a bad situation.
And based on your experience, as you were discussing from as a user of the bay for sailing, diving, kayaking, etc., how do you believe this project would change the visual or change the aesthetics of the area?
Well, again, it's, you know, you've seen the pictures of the treed shoreline, which again is regressing over time. You know, I've tried to fight that and contain them, and you know, unless I hang on to properties, which I can't afford to do, every time someone turns over, they want the view, right? So they're either going to cut down the trees or they want to further develop their properties. So if you know, both from the street side and from the lake side, I think it's a visual detraction, right? You can see this, and maybe we're going to talk about that one home that's next to, or Bayside Park, that was turned from a garage into a 3-story home. But the aesthetics here, and I think the gentleman here, you know, showed that picture as an example. But I actually went to the meetings where many of the town members were upset with that development. Right, so I think using that as an example of what the town, you know, maybe what the town allows, but not what the town members and citizens want. You know, so we're going to have more of these glassy, man-made structures, removing trees, and there's going to be very little left along this lakeshore if we continue this process.
What is your reaction when you see that juxtaposition between the project site, the way it looks now from the lake, versus what it would look like with the project? What's your reaction to that difference?
It's unfortunate, you know. It's not an aesthetic advantage to the lake, right? You know, again, it's looking like a commercial development all the way around both East and West Lakeshore Drive. You know,
could you comment a little on? Could you comment more specifically on whether you think the project is consistent aesthetically with the area?
You know, it's not dissimilar to some of the other developments there, but I'm not happy with those developments. You know, you're in Vermont, and you know you want to be in the Green Mountains, and when you're out on the lake, it's more pleasurable certainly to look at a more treed environment than an overbuilt. And you know, both sides, East Lakeshore and West Lakeshore, you know, there's not much of a setback and buffer. Everyone is taking their side lot setbacks to the max, right? So if it's 10 feet on either side, you got 20 feet between homes or commercial structures, right? With few trees.
As someone who has used the bay, paid taxes, do you have any concerns about the impact of the project on the state's investment in water quality in Lake Champlain?
Well, certainly. Again, you know, this ties into having been a diver and sailing, and, you know, it's rare to see certainly the bottom of the lake, much less, you know, I'm there, you know, you're lucky if you can see more than a foot down. You know, and I've been out there when I was diving last year. I picked a nice summer day, perfectly calm, so it wouldn't be stirred up. You know, I expected to have clear water where I could see things. I get in there, and again, I could only see 2 feet away, right? And I think I shared, maybe you didn't have it, but a picture that one of our local marine service guy shared, from a drone showing all of the runoff that comes out of these streams and creeks, and it's not necessarily due to this project, but the general runoff from impervious surface is apparent. And you can see these giant blooms within the bay.
During your time living near the bay and using the bay, have you observed any changes to the water quality?
Well, yes. I mean, again, this is not a scientific, it's just perception. But again, both visibility, I'm much more reluctant to swim in it than I was 30 or 40 years ago.
When you say blooms, what do you mean by that?
Well, so it looks like a flower coming out, right? So you've got a stream, and then you've got all the runoff and sediment, and whatever's in that, I'll call it sediment, I don't want to say effluent, whatever happens to be in there that's running in there, it comes out and then it starts spreading out once it hits the bay, right? So you'll see maybe green water, and then you'll see this expansion of brown water that's coming out. It's better to show a picture if you can see it, but it's not uncommon amongst the rivers like the Winooski. But basically it looks brown rather than this clear Vermont lake that you'd prefer to see.
And do you have you reviewed the local town and regional plans?
I've looked at it, I'm not an expert on it, but I'm aware of it, and
Hold on, let me ask you, and based on that review, do you have any positions whether the project fits within the town's regional and municipal plans based on the visions for the areas stated in those documents?
I am going to object if this gets beyond just lay factual testimony to opinions about legal documents, which should have been included as part of pre-filed testimony.
I think we're going to sustain the objection.
So I'm not asking for an expert opinion, I'm asking for a lay person opinion.
Well, the commission is certainly capable of reading the town plan itself. I don't think it needs the witness to do it for it.
Mr. Schultz, do you think there's anything about the proposed development that violates the town plan, and just so what?
One thing I remember from the town plan and people commenting, is they don't want Malletts Bay to look like Taft's Corners. So that's a high level, right? So they want it to look like a bay. And if you look at the signs that come in, you got the picture of a nice looking lake with a biker and a sailboat, right? And I think that's what we portray, but what we're developing, and that's what I believe the town plan, again, this is my perception without being an expert on the town plan, but what everyone I talk to, what we hear, what we've seen in responses to the town plan is that we want a livable area that preserves the aesthetics, preserves the, pedestrian and reasonable traffic levels such that it's pleasant to be in and drive through and walk through. And we do not, between the towns, I don't think the town is adhering to those guidelines, right? So we are overdeveloping, I don't know how we set traffic levels or what's a livable traffic level, but we seem to be exceeding that. So, the plan that wants a livable environment around the bay, and I would think everywhere else, we don't seem to be achieving that, is my perception.
And what do you believe would happen in that regard if the project were built?
Well, it's just going to exacerbate, like we said, the difficulty crossing the road as a pedestrian. It's not going to make wanting to bike through there, which is already painful. And the traffic's just going to get worse, right? You're not going to be able to make turns. People are going to get frustrated with just adding more crosswalks and more pedestrians. So it's going to become more unlivable and unpleasant to get around what's supposed to be our kind of touristic end. I've used the term right. They call it, this is the gem of Colchester, but we're not treating it like a gem.
How does the project not treat it like a gem?
Well, it doesn't make any sense to me to have, and I understand the physical constraints, but to have parking and pedestrians on one side, you're moving the marina patrons from one side to the other, right? So now making people want to easily, currently now, if you go to the marina, and it's, I think traditionally Hazelett employees, you go down there, you can park down there and just hang out. Now we're gonna have to go over there if we got a bunch of stuff, not we, they, drop their things off, maybe drop a few people off, come back over, if you got little kids, what are you gonna do? And again, we're gonna do seems to me, a significant, particularly if there are events going on, which confuses me if you call this an inn, but, having a lot of people at one time going back and forth, plus cars going back and forth perpendicular to the traffic flow.
All right, is there anything else that you want the commission to understand from your perspective as to how you view this project or concerns you have about the project under the criteria that you talked about?
Well, and again, I don't recall the exact tree count, but that's a beautiful campus that the Hazelett family and corporation has maintained up until this point when it was sold to an offshore European company, right, who has certainly the owners and the boards and everything are not here. They are not citizens of this town. They're trying to monetize their investment. And so they don't care about wiping out all those beautiful decades-old trees that you're not going to be able to replace. All those maples and everything else there is going to be, 90% of them, pick a number, right? They're keeping one or two, if I recall what the figures were. And replace that with an impervious surface. So I think that's going to be a major degradation, on the non-lake side. And again, now we're going to have a expanse of what's formerly trees. And I realized, there was a motel there, but that was a relatively small one-story, barely that, right? This is, I don't know how old it is, 56 years old. It's probably 10 feet, 12 feet tall. I remember when that was there. So this is a much larger, grander scale. I think that what was formerly there, and it certainly didn't go down the slope like it's all proposed here, right? So this is a major change. I don't think you can say this was used commercial property, we're just redoing it, right? So this is aesthetically, and the removal of trees and vegetation, I think is going to be a major degradation of the area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. There's one comment from the commission about this is for you, Mr. Schultz, and for anyone else who's going to testify about the town plan, is that our review of compliance with the town plan is affected significantly by two things. One, if the town plan language, as it is most of the time, is aspirational. This is what we want our town to look like, as opposed to you shall not do this, then we are very much constrained about looking to a town plan to deny an application if it's only that sort of visionary or aspirational thing. And secondly, we also look at it in light of the fact that if the town development review board, or whatever a town calls that, has approved it, finding that it aligned with the town plan, we take that into consideration. That's just FYI for everyone here. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
So why don't I next call Jeanette Berry? Could you state your name, please?
Jeanette Berry,
And where do you live?
76 Old Sawmill Road.
And how far is that from the project site?
Less than a mile, maybe about three quarters.
And are you prepared to speak to criteria 1F, 8, 9K, and 10?
Let's see.
Shorelines,
Shorelines,
aesthetics,
yes. 5, traffic or
5,
pedestrian safety, yes.
And then 9K is public investment.
I can speak briefly to that, yeah.
Yep, and then 10 is town. So what is your background in relation to Malletts Bay?
I've been a resident of Malletts Bay for over 35 years. I swim in the bay every summer, have for those 35 years or so. I also am a cyanobacteria volunteer monitor for the Lake Champlain Committee. And so since around 2018, I have tested the water, or at least observed the water at Bayside Park, which is a public access place, and Malletts Bay Boat Launch weekly during the summer season for cyanobacteria. I also bicycle through the Lakeshore Drive on a fairly regular basis, and I drive there like everybody has to get from Burlington to where I live most of the time.
Do you have any specific connection to the area relative to traffic, any personal connections?
Other than the fact that I ride it, yes, I ride it on a bicycle frequently. I try and use my bicycle to do my cyanobacteria monitoring because the traffic is such that it's quicker for me to do it by bicycle than it is to drive some of the time. My daughter was hit by a car, a truck turning into one of the marinas a good number of years ago. Fortunately, she was not terribly injured personally, but the bicycle was pretty damaged.
What is your view of the project's impact on the shoreline of the project?
I think aesthetically, Eric spoke to my concerns of it's an assault on my visual impression of the shoreline from the water. I canoe and kayak there occasionally, so I see it from the water. And you look and you see green, and you see green, and then you see that new sore thumb of the brown building that we've seen pictures of from the water, and it just sticks out like a sore thumb because it doesn't tuck into the hillside, or it's tall. It's a terrible impression. And this project will be a vastly expanded version of that assault on my sensibilities from the base, from the water side. Is that your question?
That was, yes, thank you. And as far as the traffic issues, have you looked at the application and the traffic study?
I didn't read the traffic study. I heard what I heard today, and I heard the traffic engineer talk about the clear sight lines from both directions. And I would have to say that, as Eric said, Mr. Schultz said, as you're coming down the dip, you're speeding up as a car.
So you're traveling east on West Lakeshore Drive?
Yeah. Down the dip towards the project. You come up the hill, and as a bicyclist, I have to work hard to keep up, and oftentimes I end up having to use the sidewalk because I'm just afraid of the traffic, afraid of the boat trailers coming too close to me. But my impression also is that the cars, they come down the hill, they come down the dip, and then they speed up. And then they're going to hit this crosswalk with flashing lights. And prior to that, there are at least 2 striped, unmarked, unsignalized crosswalks that are hashtagged for the other marinas there. There are already several of them. So you're going to get one with people crossing potentially another one, and you're going to get the one at this new location, and then you get another one at the Bayside intersection. So there's like all of these crosswalks that are coming through. People ignore them, and I think that people head up the hill, and my impression is that they're actually speeding up as they go up the hill.
And do you have any concerns with the configuration of the driveways themselves?
Yeah, I looked at the plan, and what I see is people they have to essentially make a U-turn from the right-hand lane if they're coming from Bayside Park, and they're coming along Lakeshore Drive. They have to turn a pretty tight turning circle to get into the access, the driveway, for their drop-off and pickup. Now, if they're pulling a boat trailer, they're never going to be able to make that turn. How are they going to do that? So are they going to stop in the middle of the road to drop some people off and then turn left into the parking lot? Are they not going to be able to, and perhaps they've got some disabilities or people that they don't want to have to walk across the street? I just think that boat trailers have not been taken into consideration for that driveway, or potentially for the parking lot, because this area gets a lot of visitors coming in with boat trailers, boats, because they're going to like the Lake Champlain International Fishing Competition and other fishing competitions throughout the summer season. They bring a lot of boats in, and so is there going to be, and these people come and they stay at the commercial locations. Where are they going to put those boats? Can they pull them around? Doesn't make sense to me.
And did you look at any materials from the Regional Planning's Commission's traffic studies to investigate for yourself how you might want to analyze what you've seen of the application?
I can't really speak to that in any detail.
Did you look at a 2015 study from the Regional Planning Commission? If not, that's fine.
No.
Okay. Criterion 8, aesthetics. Could you comment on whether you view that the project fits with its surroundings?
My impression is absolutely not. That stretch of Lakeshore Drive mostly was single-family homes, and still is single-story, single-family homes that are, to the extent they can be, somewhat set back from the road. There's been some new construction, particularly the brown building that sticks up like a sore thumb, that was a single-family home with a garage. And it was sold, and the owner put 2 stories on top of that garage, just plopped them on top, so now you've got a tower. And that it sticks out like a sore thumb, and it just is totally out of character with the rest of the area, which is single-story, modest homes. So having 7 buildings, whatever the number is, right up against the road, 2 stories high, big block of brick, glass, whatever the structure is, completely out of character with what is existing, except for 1 or 2 recently developed additions. And it's just going to be, it's just going to be shocking to me, frankly shocking, every time I drive or bicycle down Lakeshore Drive and see single-family, modest houses, and then this massive structure, which, as you drive by, it's just a massive structure. I don't care whether it's individual buildings that are 10 feet apart or whatever. It's going to come across as a block that is totally out of character with the rest of the area.
And do you have any specific concerns regarding public investments in the lake or in the area around the site that you want to speak to?
Yeah, it's already been addressed to some extent, the investment in cleaning up Lake Champlain from phosphorus reduction. I mean, millions and millions of dollars were put into trying to reduce pollution. And this project is going to do nothing to improve the situation, and it potentially will make it worse.
And do you have any, keeping in mind the chair's comments about the town, limitations on how the commission is viewing the town plan analysis, do you have a position as to whether or not the project fits or is consistent with the local town plan's policies?
I think the Lakeshore 1 district, it's a tiny little district that was specifically cut out so that that area, that specific little region, maintains the aesthetic that we have now, with one or two exceptions. So I guess because the town plan, as you said, is aspirational, I have concerns that this doesn't help that at all. But in terms of other public investment or in public.
Well, no, but so what's your reaction? So as the chair said, you know, they're going to take some direction from the fact the town gave the project a zoning permit, and it's understood that zoning implements the town plan. What's your view of the fact that the town has issued a zoning permit, yet you seem to be saying that you don't think it's consistent with the town plan?
I think that's correct. I think that they pretty much ignored a lot of their own regulations when they approved it, because they didn't take into the shoreline setback issues. I mean, I'm not an expert in these things, but when I went to the hearings, what I heard being proposed did not comply with some of their zoning regulations, and yet they approved it anyway. And it's just, I mean, it shocks me that they approved it, because it just doesn't comply with the zoning.
And are you participating in the appeal of that permit?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. I have nothing further.
Ross?
No question.
Ross? Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Berry.
Is Brian here? Good afternoon, Brian. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Brian Costello.
And Brian, where do you reside?
I live on 101 Smith Road in Colchester.
And what is the proximity of that property to the project site?
It's about 3 miles to the west.
And are you a frequent user of West Lakeshore Drive in the vicinity of the project?
Yes, I've lived at my current residence for 40 years. Raised 2 children who use Colchester schools. My daughter lives next door to me. She has 4 children who are also using the Colchester schools and the related recreation programs. So I've gone back and forth past the project area thousands and thousands of times over the last 40 years. I continue to do so with my grandkids and kids.
And based on your experience, are you hoping to testify on specific criteria today?
Yes.
Do you know which of those criteria are, or do you want me to help? Give you some of those?
Yeah.
Criteria 1 is water quality. Do you want to speak to water quality?
Yes.
And do you want to see?
I don't think that was in my, I didn't
not for
pre-file
Brian's,
that.
I have 1F, 5, 8, 9A, and 10.
Oh, wait, did we submit pre-filed for him? No.
No.
So, sorry, say again, 1F? Oh, we have 1F.
1F, which is shoreline, so 1F, 5, 8, 9A, and 10.
That sound right?
That sounds right.
So 1F is shorelines. What is your response to the question of whether or not the project would have an undue adverse impact on shorelines?
Well, I think it'll have a shocking impact visually.
So visually, that's under criterion 8, so we can talk about that.
Just physically on the shoreline. As far as how it pertains to the town's own regulations about building on steep slopes by the lake, I think.
Yeah, explain what your perspective is on that.
It doesn't appear to me that the town followed their own regulations on building back from the top. There's a minimum setback from the top of a bank. This just goes against every word of that regulation.
Yeah, you spoke a couple seconds ago, you talked about the visual impact. What is your perception of what the visual impact would be of the project?
Well, there's a visual impact from the lake. I'm a boater. I've spent a good portion of my life on the lake. I was a Coast Guard licensed captain for 20 years. I designed, developed, and ran the bike ferry for 20 years. I interacted with commercial marinas on the lake. I designed the infrastructure, the dock, and the boat, the bike ferry, to state and federal regulations to satisfy the need of the federal grants that we got to build that project and to rebuild the causeway. I was involved with the rebuilding of the causeway after the high water, the unprecedented, historic 200-year flood level of the lake in 2011. 103.2 was the official height. They had to redo the charts to get that in. So I've seen lots of shoreland erosion firsthand during that event. Significant sections of significant banks around the lake. One of Marilyn's house, a big chunk slid into the lake. She is fortunately back from the top of a bank, not built into a bank, the way this project is. Just on East Lakeshore Drive, another piece of land that the Hazelett Corporation owned and sold to the town. That section of bank has, in 2011, slumped down into the lake. And then there's the visual aspect of it from the road. I don't think that the representation, the visual representation that was given to the Colchester Development Review Board by the applicants is accurate. It shows it from the perspective of pretty much from the Hazelett building, more or less, looking straight at the six buildings, showing how you can see between them, see the lake. Kind of, I guess they're trying to prove that it doesn't block the view of the lake 100%. Well, if you look at the site plan, I don't know if we can pull that up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I haven't done any geometry, but so the virtual rendering with all the nice colors in it, looks to me like it was a perspective to the south of Lakeshore Drive, allowing you from a distance to see between the buildings a little bit. But if you can imagine being from the perspective of a pedestrian or a driver, and you're on the road to the left side of this picture, and you draw a sight line to the first building, second building, third building, you'll see the side of each building. You won't see the lake at all. Even if you're right in front of the main building, if you look to the west and you look to the east, you're going to see the sides of those respective buildings. You're not, unless you stop in between two buildings where there's 20 feet between the buildings, 10 feet, I don't know. Unless you just stop there and look towards the lake, that's the only view of the lake that's going to be left to all pedestrians and all drivers on Lakeshore Drive forever if this is built.
And keep mindful, did you hear the testimony earlier about the Queechy test? Do you understand what that is?
Yes.
What's your reaction to the question of whether the project would be shocking or offensive?
I think to eliminate the view 100%, I think would meet that threshold of being shocking and offensive and undue adverse impact. An adverse impact would be if it adversely affected the view. If it eliminates the view, like this will, I would call that undue.
And what is your view as to whether it fits the character of the area?
Absolutely. The only character of the area that it fits is the 3-story buildings that the applicant showed pictures of.
Do you view the character of the area as something else other than those 3-story buildings?
Well, when the town did the town plan, and they redid the zoning specifically to address the potential overdevelopment of the sewer project.
Were you
Development
involved in that whole thing?
Excuse me?
Were you involved as a citizen in those?
Many times, yes. The town proposed a sewer project for Malletts Bay 3 times or 4 times. It was voted down 3 times, and ironically, in my opinion, the only reason that it passed on the 4th try, ironically, was because of COVID. The COVID recovery money was to go to towns for various projects to help towns recover from COVID and to spur new appropriate development. Most towns spread it around to different projects for different reasons. The town of Colchester took 100% of that money and put it in the sewer pot and brought that to the voters. So financially, that's what made it passed. And yes, I was involved with that, voicing my concern about overdevelopment in the Bay, along with many other people in town. And in response to that, the town redid their zoning regulations and came up with 4 different lakeshore zoning districts. 2 which apply here. 2 are for East Lakeshore Drive, that's Lakeshore 3 and 4. Lakeshore 1 and 2 have to do with West Lakeshore Drive. Lakeshore 1, as was said before, is only that very thin strip of property in between West Lakeshore Drive and the lake. That's Lakeshore 1. And the towns and the DRB specifically put different zoning regulations there from Lakeshore 2, which is everything on the south side of the lake, which involves much larger properties, like the overall Hazelett property, the Malletts Bay campground, some broad acres, some very sizable properties, where they envision the development of, specifically, they mentioned hotels. Hotels were specifically not allowed in Lakeshore 1.
I'm going to object. The zoning permit was issued by the town and is on appeal to the environmental division. This isn't a zoning proceeding, and I'm not sure how this goes to any of the pertinent activity criteria.
Mr. Costello, if you could confine your testimony to, if we're talking about the town plan compliance now, if you have a disagreement over the town plan or how it was implemented in this case, that's one thing, and I think Mr. Roy is right. We're not here to discuss that. The people who get paid more money than the commission do, the judges will decide that. But if you could tell us more about I think we've heard from you on 1F and on 8. I don't think you've covered traffic, that and the public infrastructure ones. I think we're interested to hear. Okay. You could share your perspective on those.
On transportation?
Yeah, what's your perspective on whether or not the project's safe from a transportation pedestrian standpoint?
Well, my main concern that the site distance weren't, there was no number on the site distance to the east or west in the traffic report. That would be, I think, a good number for the commission to have, as was stated earlier. But my main concern is with the pedestrian crossing. In my role at Local Motion, I spent a significant amount of time developing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and specifically the danger of mid-block crossings is what this is. It's good that there's a signal there, but the signal will stop traffic. The signal will stop traffic dozens, potentially 100 times a day on that busy road, it also is relevant to a future traffic improvement, which would be the roundabout at Bayside Park. One of the negative unintended consequences of a roundabout, they're generally safer as far as accidents go, but they don't allow, there's no longer a slug of traffic going through, starting and stopping with red lights and green lights for people who are waiting to go across the road. I go across the road hundreds of times from straight across the road from one side to the other side, just like this development would propose. With the traffic backed up at that, well, I lost my train of thought here. With the roundabout, there'll no longer be it'll be a constant flow of traffic rather than a start and stop with red light and green light sections of traffic. So, and when things are stopped at this mid-block flashing crossing, and a busy summer day, that traffic will get backed up into the roundabout. Roundabouts are meant to keep traffic clear without there being any waiting lines. So once traffic gets backed up into one arm of a roundabout, the whole thing fails.
And then relative to the